Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. Today, in The Router Workshop, a shop stool that's equally at home in the kitchen, bathroom, playroom, or laundry area. Special angled leg design helps prevent tipping, while the convenient handhold and lightweight pine construction make it sturdy yet easy to move around. You'll find 1,001 uses for the shop stool, next on The Router Workshop.
So what are we doing today, Dad? Got a neat step stool here, Rick, and it's a shop step stool, something we designed a long time ago. And I guess it's colorful.
Oh, hey, listen, there's nobody going to want to take your step stool. I'm telling you, and if they do, you're going to know it's yours, aren't you?
That's for sure. Anyway, Louis did a good job. We got it painted up here. Rick has got a few unique things here, and as you know, we got a little taper on it. And that's when you step on it, it doesn't tip.
We don't want to be standing on a pail or anything.
That's
what we're doing here.
And we got a tip on this side, too, that it looks after. But there's a few parts to it. We got two legs that are alike. We got two rails that are the same, and we got a top in here.
Okay.
Now, we've got these pieces pretty well ready to go. But what we need to do is, if I can turn this over and have another look on the bottom here, it's kind of neat that we've got a bevel on this side,
I'm going to get the tapers
and
done.
it's got to be paralleled on the one on top here. So don't forget to
show you all the
and then we'll show them the pieces after anyway. And then maybe you can pre-cut this out for me.
All right.
And while you take that with you, let me give you some pieces here.
Yeah, I'll go get those tapes. I'm putting the bevels on and cleaning up the pieces for you.
Exactly. And then what I'm going to do is get my rails ready to go.
Okay, good. All right, now what we need to do is put two bevels on the ends of the little stool. And to start off with that, what I've done is we've made a little fixture here. I have a 15-degree slope on the side here, which is going to give us our bevel. The other little tricky part about this little piece is that it's made like a joiner fence, meaning that the infeed and the outfeed don't match. And I'll just show you how that works. And it's going to hit the outfeed part of it. That means we're taking off approximately 1/8 of an inch. Now, the trick to this setup is the fact that the cutting edge of the tool matches the outfeed of the cutter, or outfeed of the fence. So let's go ahead and show you how to set that up. Now what I'm going to do is put the fence over here, and let's put the one clamp on the back side. It always gives us a chance to position our piece before we get started. Make sure that the cutter free moves inside of this, and when you're making all these setups, folks, make sure that it is unplugged. If you look at my bit carefully, I'm using a flush trim bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the material here up against the outfeed and onto the bearing. That should make sure that the cutter is even too. So we're going to just slide it up along the top here and just push it till it touches the bearing. Once I've got the bearing touched, I'm going to go and get the other clamp now and clamp it down, tighten it down in place. And now let's double check it to make sure that it is in fact just touching the bearing. It is. We're just going to get it so that it comes off that bearing just a little bit, so we've got it just right. I think we've got something there now. What we're going to do is we're going to take this scrap piece of material here and just check to make sure we've got everything operating properly. It's always a good idea to make sure it works before you start using that material that you took time to glue up. All right, again, we're going to plug that in. Every time you make your setups, make sure you have the tools unplugged before you do that. All right. Now, there's the kind of angle that it puts on our piece, and that's that little ledge bevel that we're looking for on our two ends of our little stool here. So now the next thing is to get in mind exactly how we want to make these cuts. Now, I've gone ahead and put a couple of pencil marks on here, which is going to give us the bevel direction we're looking at. We want to make the two of them parallel. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to make one cut down here, two cuts until it matches so that they're right across the bevel and there's no flat spots on it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to flip it over. And again, you can make sure that it's still lined up properly before you go ahead and cut it. That's just another quick tip. So let's go ahead now. I have one more thing I want to do is I want to set the height of that bit so that it's going to cut this 3/4 material. So I'm going to raise the tool up now so I've got a lot of material, all the cutting edge there working with us. And let's go ahead and try it.
This router bit that we're going to use has a bearing on it, but it's not going to come into play with what we're doing. It has two cutters. We got one on either side, and it's got a little bit of a rake on it. You can see that the angle is a head on it. That'll make it cut better. We're also going to use a guide to run that with when we come to cut the pattern. Now that'll do the pattern cutting because we'll follow the guide, but we also need a guide to do the first operation in the rails. And that bit looks like this. This is a 3/4 inch. That is, it's 3/4 across it in here, and it's a type of bit that you can cut quite a length in, about 1.5 inches. We have a 1/2 inch shank on it. So that's the cutter that we need to shank up first in here, and then we're going to use a 1-inch guide with it. So let me get the router out of here. Isn't that neat how we can just tip that up, and we'll put this inside. We got a 2-wrench system in here, so we'll tighten it up into place, and we'll tighten it down. Now, when we get this set up in here, one of the first things I'd like to do before I get too far along is I'm going to take my watch off. I usually put it in a little box in here and get rid of your rings and your watch, people. You don't want to get tangled up in those. So we'll take and put that away. And here's my rails. And the rails in here are a little bit tricky. I've marked them on the inside edge, and you can see that mark on the inside edge is the opposite angle to what we have in here. And what we need to do is set the bit up so it's about half distance here, and I probably will set it about 3/8 of an inch. We're looking at something close to 3/4. But before we can start in here, I want to put my guide in. We'll just set those in, and the guide is 1 inch. It's a 1-inch diameter guide, and it has a ring nut on the back side. And I'll let you have a look at that guide. This one's a 1 inch across. That is, it's a 1-inch diameter. And on the back side, it's got threads on it and a ring nut. So it simply fits in from the side. The ring nut goes up on the back side in here. And it will hold because it's solid brass. Just finger tighten them up. And we'll snug it up like that. Now what happens in here, and I'm going to bring it over to let you have a better look at it. When I bring this inside of here, what it is that bit is exactly centered. That is, that all the way around it's the same distance away from the guide. Now that's important with the kind of fixture that I'm going to use here. So we'll lock it in, and I'll raise the cutter up, and we'll bring the miter gauge in. That miter gauge has got a slot in it, and it fits right over. Now it doesn't matter where you go with it, it's going to be right. And this is the angle that we can use in here. So let's go back to the rails, and remember we got a left and a right. And on that left and a right in here, I'm going to mark one. And now what we've got to do is set this. Well, that can be a little tricky here to set. So what we're going to do is use a block. And I've got an angle cut. I got an angle cut on here. That's my setup. And we'll set it in like that. And then we'll tip this piece over, and we can adjust the head to it. Now that'll just center you right up exactly and lock it in here. And we'll set that in perfect where you want it. Now the only other thing we have to do is set the depth. And I'm going to use a little brass setup bar here. These brass bars are great because they are always the same. They don't shrink or anything with weather or temperature. Anything to do with that, we'll set it in there. We got it about 3/8 of an inch. Now, what we need to do is if I cut across there, I'd be wrong. And because it's parallel, remember it goes the opposite way. So it's this end that we need to do. We got 2 little marks in here, and what that does is just show me where the center is on it. And we'll set it up, and we'll see if we got some power. Let's plug in here. And we'll cut those down. Now we're going to relock and set again. This time we got to make the reverse angle in it. So we bring that back inside of here. Got little chips in there. Keep them cleaned out. Tighten it up here. And put the block in. And we will reverse the angle. See how quick that is to set it up? That just gives you exactly the find on it so you don't have to read anything. And again in here. This time we have to transfer the marks. And we're away.
After cutting the bevels, I rough cut the legs at the bandsaw and gave them back to Dad for final shaping.
Now, I think I'm about ready, Rick, for those legs. Aha, you got them pre-cut out here so I can get a little rough cut. What we need to do is put this in a pattern. But before I do that, I'm going to chuck up a guide in here, and the guide will let me follow that pattern. So just let me take that again here, and I'll put the guide in. And the guide that I've got this time is a 3/4 inch guide. That is, it's 3/4 inch diameter across the top. Works the same as the other one. We'll lock it into place, and we'll just tighten that down inside of here. Lock it up. And again, we'll just let you have a look here. And on that system in it, that bit now comes up center again. And that pattern that we've got is going to follow that brass piece in it. It's stationary. The bit does the turning. The bearing in the top of the bit doesn't come into play. So we'll just lock it down. We'll bring the cutter back up here, and I'll readjust it after for the height. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a safety pin in. And that little safety pin is a brass pin. It has a pin on the bottom end of it, so 3/16, and goes in a hole. And never work without it. You need it in here because what you want to do is that bit turns in that direction. For safety, it'll take it away from you. If you've got a pin to go to, that's your safety thing. So let's have a look at the fixture. Again, a shop-made fixture in it, and you'll notice that I've used some phenolic in it. If you're making one at home, you can use plywood, and if you use plywood, people, use a Baltic birch. It has a better system inside here. It's not just a 3-layer. It has more layers, and they're very dense in it. A very tempered hardboard will work, too, if it's tempered and solid in it. You'll notice in here, if you can have a good close-up at it, you'll see a bevel on it. And that's going to match that bevel that Rick put on those legs for us, and then we've got the hold-downs. So let me get one of them blanks and put it inside of here and lock it in. And just to have a look at, see what Rick had done there again, just to review here, we got this bevel on it, and the two go underneath it, and then you just have to center it in here. And what Rick's done is rough bandsawed these out for us, so we didn't have all that excess material. Now, there are a couple of little things in here we need to tell you about. First, when we built the jig, we built it longer than we needed it to come by the block. So, in fact, it will come up against that guide prior to hitting into the cutter in it, and then the cutter will take it. So that's a safety in itself, but we'll still leave the pin in it, and you come across there. One of the things we have to do is adjust the cutter in it so that the cutter is cutting in it, and I got it high enough. That'll be fine. Again, you can see the bearing is not in play here at all. Here's the tricky part. We're going to come down this, and that's the grain. The grain of the wood, you can probably see it real plain inside of here. But as I come down here, we're coming on the top side of the grain, and it'll have a tendency to tear out in it. What you can do is if you got a lot of material, you're left a little extra in it, just take a bigger guide in it. It'll move you away, and you take a little at a time. Once you get sided in here and the cutter gets in it, what it's going to do is push the wood away. So when you approach it in here, don't get too big a hurry to cut it. Let it cut. I'm going to go down the side. I'm going to turn around here. I'm going to come up in the end here, pick up that round hole and back out again. And that's going down grain again. And then this one will work good, and then we'll have the leg done. And then I just need to do the second one. So let's just give it a try. I need to plug in here and get some power. And we get that set up, and we get some power on. Notice when I did that one that we did get a fair amount of chip out on it, but we were with the grain so you don't get tore back in and ruin your piece.
Now what we need to do is go ahead and put a slot in here so our hand can pick up this little stool. To do this, we have a fixture that's got ourselves set up where it's got a pattern that's going to cut that for us, and we're going to use the router and a guide and plunge in and cut the hole out. The first thing we need to do is mount the top of our stool in so that it's in the center, and I've got a mark on here which gives us our center. I'm using these toggle clamps to hold it in place, and that gives us a spot where we're right in the center of our pattern here. The next thing we need to do is set the depth of the tool so that the depth of the tool is plunging right through our piece of material. We want to make sure that we're going deep enough to do the job. So to start with, I zero it out, and I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of blocks here. I've got quarter and half, but I want to make sure that it's longer than the depth here, which our thickness of our material is 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to make sure that it's deeper than that. And we got that set there so that it shows us our depth a little deeper than 3/4, if you see that. You got to make sure that you're going to be able to plunge right through your pieces. All right. Now that we've got it set there, we're going to lay it up here now. And again, before you do anything else, make sure that you go ahead and unplug the tool before you go ahead and make any adjustments. And I found that when portable tools are plugged in, that you got to make sure that it's in an off position before you start to do that. We'll go ahead now and plug it in. And of course, this plug-in, there we go. Now we'll go ahead and get ourselves orientated to where we want to feel for. Now, you don't have to see what you're doing when you're working with a pattern, because what you're doing is you're just following the guide. You just make sure that you keep to the outside edge and you're going in the direction that's pulling the piece into the area, okay, into the pattern. All right, I'm going to make this in a couple of passes. So we'll start off with starting her up. Now you've heard that piece drop in the bottom there. What I've done is I've used the hole in the center here, which will allow the piece to fall through. If you notice from up here, you have a little edges of material sitting here yet. We want to make sure we've got this cleaned out and that the router has been able to go right up tight to your pattern to make the cut. So don't take it out until you've checked to make sure it has been, and it's not in this case. Here we have it off a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and make a final cut here, just cleaning it up. So we'll start it back into the center before we start. Isn't that plunge router great when you can go ahead over top and push right down, lock it in. Now we can start it and go up tight. Now we'll just check that to make sure it's clear, and let's take a quick look at this. I'll get the other toggle clamp off. And there, folks, we've got it all cleaned out, ready to go. Now all we need to do is, I'm going to knock this down here and go and set up the table-mounted system and just give this edge around so that your hands feel a little better with it. So I'll set this piece down, and let's get the router moved out of the way. We'll unplug the portable router because I'm going to go into a stationary router now, so I'll set this aside. And get my fixture off here. Now what I've put into the stationary router is a roundover bit, just a 1/4 inch roundover, because you just want it so that your hands can feel very safe and comfortable when you're picking up your stool. You don't want that to be a painful operation. So I'll bring it over here and I'll give you a quick look at this router bit I've got. What we've got in here is just a 1/4 inch roundover bit, and all we're going to do is round over the bottom and round over the top. So we'll slide this back in place here. Let's get the cord into the tool, and we'll drop her right back down inside. And because we're running on the inside, we shouldn't need anything there, except the only trick here is when you're routing on the inside, make sure you keep your fingers on the outside. So we're going to slide it down on top, make sure it's in position. We're going to start up the tool. There's the round over on the one side. We're going to let it come to a complete stop before we put it back in. This is a pretty fine hole. Once you've got it in, hold it down in place, turn it back on again.
What we're going to do here is cut some divots. And we're going to put 2 in each rail, and it has to be on the top edge because those are the little shoulders, and after I cut them, it'll be easier for you to see in there where we're going to put the screws up from underneath to hold the top on. And we need them on both sides. This is going to be done with a handheld router, plunge router this time. So I'm going to use my workbench here and just to hold that and a clamp, and we'll clamp these into place. Also on the router in here, and I've pre-chucked up a bit, so I'm going to show you that bit. We'll just tighten that down so it doesn't come loose on me. And here's what the router looks like. This one's got the springs in it, so you can see that the router will plunge up and down in it. We also have the fence on it. And inside of that, if you just give me a second here, I'm going to plunge that down, and then I'll tip it up so you can have a look in here. That bit is 45 degrees. That is, it's 45 degrees off the top in it and has 2 cutters in it. And that's about the depth we're going to go. And it'll just go down and put a neat little round, like a countersink more or less is what it'll look like when I get done. The fence will keep our distance, and in here on the fence I'm just going to guess at it because it really doesn't matter where they go as long as it holds in it. Now we'll set it up in here and we'll set it down. Now the neat thing about a router like this is you can bring the bit down so it touches to the material, and that bottomed out flush at it. Now, how deep did you want to go? Let's suggest that you'd like to do a 1/2 inch. So you can take your brass bar then, and you can put that brass bar in here. Loosen it off at the bottom, and you can run that bar up. That is your little pull stop, and set that inside it like that. Lock it down in holes there. You could even tell, and then just lock it while the bar's in there. Now you can take the bar out, and you can just see exactly what you've got for depth. Now there was a little turret system in it, and I took it off there today so that you could see better, otherwise it blocks it up here. And then we tip it in here, and that's exactly right. You look at it and say, well, that's a little tight. You can back it off if you like, and then lock it up. Now we got the depth set. What I need to do is just set that aside here for a second, and we'll plug in and get some power. And we'll get this cord put in right here. Now, bring the bit up. And I'm just going to guess here in the end and use this fence length for me. And then I'm just going to plunge down. Not going to move the router, just going to plunge down. Now, we're just going to tip these up so you can have a look at them. Right down in those divots now, we got them on both sides, is where you got a little shoulder in there to drill your hole to put your wood screw in. And don't use a tapered screw. Use the ones with a round head that has a flat base on underneath the head of it. That way it won't split the wood apart. That's what will mount that top onto it.
It's time for Router Bits, where we highlight viewer mail and projects. This time on Router Bits, we have a letter and photo from Daniel of the University of Wisconsin. Daniel writes,
Dear Bob and Rick, I'm a regular viewer of the Router Workshop on Prairie Public TV from Fargo, North Dakota. I thought you might be interested in one of the many little projects I've made with your central core routing system. The enclosed snapshot shows a couple of several mallets for carving made using the mystery dovetail described on one of your programs. Of the variations I've made using your procedure, the mallets seem to generate the most interest among my woodworking friends, and I've not given the secret away as yet. For the mallet on the right, the handle is white oak, the center portion purple heart, and the face is beech. The turned mallet is made from red oak and ash.
Our last letter comes from Ted and Shannon of Prescott, Arizona.
Dear Bob and Rick, my wife Shannon and I wanted to build our new baby girl a unique toy box. Shannon wanted it to look like a Barnum and Bailey circus wagon, so I made the box and Shannon started painting. But it still needed something more, so I used your heart-spoke wheel jig to make the wheels. We think it looks great. I hope you two approve.
Well, we're ready to assemble, and Rick, would you come in and bring that top with you over here?
We got the top already.
And I got
here.
the legs, and I think we'll start with the legs in it, and maybe we'll just tip this one down, and the legs tip out that side, so maybe we can just take and start with the one you got there.
This is going to be...
We got a left and a right. No, we don't.
You didn't make 2 rights.
I don't so. Now, this is a big thing. See what you did in here? There's that taper. But that taper in it is the same as what we've got on the end in here, and that you did on the side.
And that's what the taper...
Here was the tricky part, was that they were parallel.
Yes, that was tough making those the same.
Yeah, sure you did. Now, let's just slip one in on your side.
Okay, we'll get this one on the other
side. We
side.
need enough hands here, you know.
And we'll flip that in
then...
place. That should be probably flush on the top, too, shouldn't it?
We can fix it after.
Oh, you can fix that, can you?
We can fix it, yeah. If it don't fit, a bigger hammer will do it.
Bigger hammer.
Now, got your 2 ends.
Stand
it up and hope it stays there. Just a little bit. Oh, you got a good hammer hand there. Whoops. My end went down, your ends didn't.
Okay, I think we've got it now. Let's put that lid on top.
Hey,
bingo.
You know what's wrong with it?
What?
It's not painted green and blue top.
Oh, but not yet. Now, remember, in your workshop, folks, probably better not to paint it because when you finish that nice walnut top or whatever, you go ahead and mark it up on your stool. You're going to have it blue.
It would look good.
Or green.
Or purple.
All right.
I like purple.
Oh, thanks for watching this Router Workshop. We'll see us next time.
Sounds like a great plan.
We'd like to hear from you. You can email us at the address on your screen. Send your comments, questions, or project ideas to The Router Workshop, Post Office Box 608, Chamberlain, South Dakota, 57325. Or in Canada, The Router Workshop, Post Office Box 280, Ely, Manitoba, ROH-OHO. To learn more about The Router Workshop, visit us at the internet address on your screen. An 1880s vintage storage box for sewing machine parts is the inspiration for an interesting time in The Router Workshop. We'll show you how to use your router station to make your very own roll-up box. Designed with walnut spline box joints, this is sure to become one of your favorite projects. That's next time, right here on The Router Workshop. Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. For $16.99 plus $4.99 shipping and handling, you can order Bob and Rick Rosenthal's The Router, a 130-page book which includes a plan to build the router table and bench, plus numerous tips, techniques, and educational information. Call 1-800-803-1449.